everyone. I'm Lisa.
And I'm Nick.
And you're listening to It Takes Two, the podcast where two people take two movies with the same plot or premise and watch and discuss them.
And in this, the second episode of 2024, we're reviewing two movies based on a poem, which is... What was their face?
I mean, they're not... The movies aren't based on poems, really.
Okay. Then what's the connection of this episode before we release the movies?
The movies are both based on novels by different authors, and those authors wrote those novels inspired by a poem that they both disagreed with.
Okay. 2007 Stardust and 2004's Howl's Moving Castle.
Yeah. This is I feel like this is going to be the one that's going to be most difficult for me to try and do a summary that encompasses both of them, but I'll give it a shot. These are both movies about a romance of sorts, slightly unconventional, involving a white-haired woman with magical properties and a handsome dork, and the adventures they go on together as they fall in love.
Have you got the original poem?
Yeah. Do you want me to read the original poem?
Yeah, might as well.
Okay.
Set the atmosphere.
Very unconventional for us as a podcast that we start off by reading a poem. So it's called "Go and Catch a Falling Star" by John Donne, and it goes like this. Go and catch a falling star, get with child and man... Oh my god, I've tripped up already. Let me start again. Go and catch a falling star, get with child a mandrake root, tell me where all past years are, or who cleft the devil's foot. Teach me to hear mermaids singing, or to keep off envy's stinging, and find what wind serves to advance an honest mind. If thou beest born to strange sights, things invisible to see, ride 10,000 days and nights, till age snow-white hairs on thee. Thou, when thou returnest, wilt tell me all strange wonders that befell thee, and swear nowhere lives a woman true and fair. If thou find'st one, let me know. Such a pilgrimage were sweet, yet do not, I would not go, though at next door we might meet, though she were true when you met her, and last till you write your letter, yet she will be false ere I come, or 2 or 3. So it's very misogynist, and the premise of the poem is essentially all women are unfaithful and terrible, and if you think you found a woman who is an honest woman, you haven't. And the poem is essentially saying you could, here's a list of impossible things you could do, and you could do all of these before you could find a woman who's not going to cheat on you.
That's fair.
So we have two different authors who have gone, no, screw you, that's not accurate. And made lovely, wonderful fantasy novels about it, and then those have been adapted into films.
Is Stardust a standalone novel?
I think Stardust is standalone. Howl's Moving Castle is not. It's the first in a trilogy.
Yeah, because Howl's Moving Castle definitely has a less... they lived happily ever after. It's sort of cool, yeah. Now they're off on another adventure sort of ending.
Yeah. Also, I believe, because I haven't read the books, I've read about the books, and I kind of want to read both these books, so I might buy myself them. I was literally, as we were watching, I was looking up on iMDb, oh, they do have Howl's Moving Castle, the book. They also have Stardust, but it's more than twice the price.
Well...
Because I guess Neil Gaiman is more of a well-known name these days.
Yeah. I have looked at a couple of his books in interest to read them in the future. I thoroughly enjoyed what we watched recently.
Good Omens.
Good Omens.
Yeah.
Hopefully that continues. And something I bought 2 seasons of and then didn't realise it was based on books because I watched the first episode. New Gods.
Okay.
Which is a very interesting story. And For those who don't know, it's basically like the old gods dealing with the new gods, and the new gods are all, the things we've worshipped in the, since the Industrial Revolution. And then, some mortal guy who's, spoilers, isn't what he seems to be, dealing with this weird war between old gods and new gods.
It's funny because I have not read any Neil Gaiman, including Good Omens, which was co-written with my favorite author.
Yeah.
But I have read a lot of Terry Pratchett.
Yeah.
And he also writes about gods being, wished into existence
By
essentially
people who worship them, yeah.
by people who believe in it, and a particularly good book, which is a standalone kind of in because a lot of Terry Pratchett Discworld novels are series, and then some of them are you could read them without reading any others, and it's one called Small Gods, and it's following a god who has lost so much power that he's now just like a turtle because he only has one person on the planet who believes him, so he's trying to get that one person to spread the word of his his godliness so that he can go back to being a full god.
Makes sense.
Which is fun.
As the concept of D&D invades more and more of the zeitgeist of our common era, so much stuff is just like a D&D campaign.
Oh, you think that these were?
Stardust definitely felt like a D&D campaign.
Do you know what it reminded me of? And it's funny because when I looked up trivia about it, there was a particular piece of trivia that I was like, yeah, that makes sense. It reminded me of the Adventures of Baron Munchausen.
Yeah, it did a little bit.
Yeah, and the piece of trivia was that they originally wanted Terry Gilliam to write and direct it.
Right.
And he didn't want to because he'd just done The Brothers Grimm.
Right.
And he didn't want to do another fairy tale type movie.
Yeah, that movie's okay.
Yeah, I really like Stardust. For the record, I say this as if this is the first time I've watched it. I've seen Stardust multiple times before. I really enjoyed that movie.
Yeah.
Also, Howl's Moving Castle.
Yeah.
Both very good movies.
I had not seen Stardust, but I definitely watched Howl's Moving Castle a lot.
Yeah.
I think we should just jump into the movies.
There's a lot of similarities. There's a lot of while the plot isn't so much the same, there's a lot of elements that are the same. You know what I mean?
There is some plot similarities.
Yeah, but it's not. There's no same through line. Yeah.
It's not like kidnap person with autism and make money out of them, like our previous episode.
Yeah. It's not so specifically. Here's the plot line that's the same in both movies, but there's a lot of elements that were very similar, which is funny because allegedly both movies aren't good adaptations of the books. So it's funny that the books were written based on the same thing and the movies have still turned out to be quite similar.
Yeah. It's interesting because, watching Stardust today, and just going, 2007, it's like, you've got some of these interesting, you look at it now and you're like, oh, that person's, super famous, because, what's his name, something Cox?
Charlie Cox.
He
was an unknown at the time.
Yeah.
Almost everyone else in it is...
just super famous.
Was super famous at the time.
Yeah. And then Charlie Cox being the main character, and it's just like, for those who don't know and don't remember, it's Daredevil.
Yeah,
Marvel Daredevil.
So I had the opposite kind of revelation to you, because you obviously watched this and were like, hey, it's Daredevil.
Yeah.
Whereas I watched Daredevil and I was like, this is the dorky guy from Stardust. What are they doing? How is he going to play Daredevil? And I was like, oh, pretty well, actually.
Yeah.
It's interesting because the studio really didn't want to cast an unknown. They really wanted Orlando Bloom. And the co-writer and director of the movie was like, I want to cast this guy because I think he can play the kind of dorky guy at the beginning, but also be the suave hero by the end of it.
Yeah.
I think he can do both characters. And he got the studio off his back by casting very well-known actors in other roles, by landing, Robert De Niro and Michelle Pfeiffer, Mark Strong, Claire Danes, obviously. And that was how he convinced the studio to let him cast a basic unknown at the time in the lead role.
Yeah, it's interesting too because we watched Howl's Moving Castle in the original Japanese.
Yeah.
You haven't seen it in English.
No.
And it's interesting because I've watched it so many times in English because usually I'm too lazy to read subtitles unless it's a movie set in a country. Because this is clearly medieval Europe. And, you know, like, I'll watch a movie that's set in all the South Korean movies. I'm not watching the horrible English edits and, dubs of them.
I mean...
what did we watch recently that started with... Oh, it was The Peninsula.
Yeah, started with them speaking English and
yeah,
we were confused by it.
But some of the dialogue in Howl's Moving Castle is different. And I prefer... the dialogue of the Japanese edit, the Japanese dialogue than the English because, like, as you said, I couldn't stand, this is what you said, I'm quoting you now, hearing Billy Crystal being Calcifer.
Yeah, I haven't listened to it, and I was like, I don't, like, because we watched your DVD of Howl's Moving Castle, and we watched it in Japanese with English subtitles, but at the end, the English credits came up, so we've just watched the whole Japanese movie, and then it's like, oh, this was Christian Bale. I was like, wow, I didn't know he was so fluent in Japanese. But yeah, when I saw Billy Crystal as Calcifer, I was like, I just can't, like, this Mike Wazowski doing Calcifer, I just, like, because I can't imagine Billy Crystal not sounding like Billy Crystal.
Again, like what you said about getting big names, and I think that's one of the big draws, because obviously, you know, the distribution company realised how well Spirited Away did.
Yeah.
And they were just like, no, like, top name billing, like, we're going to get Christian Bale in here, like...
Well, Christian Bale allegedly had seen Spirited Away and was like, I'll do any voice, he thought they were going to cast him as Turnip Head. He didn't, and then he was like, wait, I'm the title character?
I'm the lead? What?
How did that happen? But yeah, because I started to say to you, and then you were like, save it for the podcast. That when I watched Spirited Away with the English dub, I just couldn't get over the fact that Divide Chase is just doing Lilo. It's just Lilo again, but as Chihiro. And what I was going to say to you when you were like, no, don't tell me what you're going to say, is there's a line from the English dub of Spirited Away which lives in my head rent-free, which is, there's a moment, because in Studio Ghibli films, they don't explain things to you, you just know them, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They just show it, and you're like, oh, I get it. And in Spirited Away, there's a whole... I don't want to... I'll say briefly, maybe spoilers for people who haven't seen Spirited Away, which is not a movie we're discussing in total here. There's a whole thing where... we know this. We just know it inherently, because that's how these work. Haku, who has been the guy who's at the bathhouse with her, is a dragon. He transforms into a water dragon.
He's a spirit of a river that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. So he's the spirit of the river. So he has this dragon form, and then he transforms into boy form. Also, he's voiced by the guy who voices Max Goof in the English dub as well. So and more for me, Tino Tonatini from The Weekenders. So I can only hear him as Tino Tonatini as well. Anyway, there's a line in it in the Japanese original, Chihiro just sees the dragon and then, like, runs to help.
Yeah.
In the English dub, even though her mouth doesn't move, nothing is happening, she goes, Haku is the dragon? Why? I could figure that out myself. I don't need her to just suddenly announce it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm watching the movie. That's gonna become apparent. You don't need to just, like, go... Hey, sideline for the audience. Haku is the dragon. Yeah. Did you know? I've revealed it for you. Anyway, rant over. Back to the movies.
It's usually my plan.
I think that's why you wanted me to save it for the podcast.
Yes, indeed, I did.
You wanted me to do a rant.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense.
Howl's Moving Castle is clearly like a medieval Europe that's sort of like, it's interesting because I really like this genre because it's not steampunk.
Yeah.
It's like magic punk. It's like hex punk almost. And it's not so much with Stardust because obviously there's the real world and then this like weird magic realm.
Can I say something to you about Howl's Moving Castle?
Well, that's the whole premise of this episode.
I know. but the book version of it, and it's funny because I saw a Tumblr post about this the other day. So if anyone's following us on Tumblr, you'll have seen me reblog this already, because I was like, I gotta reblog it to the podcast again because I knew we were doing this episode. And I've also seen other stuff about it. You know how in Howl's Moving Castle, the movie, there's the black area the door goes to, and his assistant is like, well, only Howl knows where that goes.
Yeah.
And then we kind of see that it goes to like a war-torn, it's like in the middle of a war where he's fighting or whatever.
Yeah.
That was inserted by Hayao Miyazaki because Hayao Miyazaki hates war and wants to talk about war in all his films.
Yeah. In
the book, the door opens to modern-day Wales.
What?
Well, I guess the book was written in the 80s, so 1980s in Wales. Right. Just to, like, his home. He just, like, goes there and, like, plays rugby with the boys and hangs out with his sister who tells him to get a real job. And he's like, I'm a wizard. And she's like, no, a real job. And then he goes back through the magic portal into this magic realm. So the world that Sophie lives in and that the movie takes place in, because the movie is entirely in this place, is like a magical kingdom where fairy tale tropes are real.
Yeah.
But in the book, he just goes to Wales. He just comes and goes from Wales to the thing, which it feels more like Stardust to me. So I can see that, because obviously in Stardust they're in rural England, and then they cross over a wall into a magic kingdom through a portal. Yeah,
and it's confusing to set a time in the rural England and
it's apparently not.
Why?
Because there is a moment where someone says they're going to sell, when they're selling the billy goat, they're selling it for a florin, which is a coin that was issued in Britain only between the years of 1849 and 1967. So we have a relative time frame there. I mean, it's about 100 years, but still, it's late 1800s, early 1900s. Yeah. is when it's said.
It's.
But it is very timeless.
Yeah, it's also the fact that like the main character,
Tristan.
Yeah, Tristan doesn't freak out at seeing things that would blow the mind of like a 1700s person.
Yeah.
But also like magical stuff happens and he's just like, yeah, cool, I'm like on board with this. So it is a very weird like placement of like, rural England. Hey, I guard this wall and I'm the same age even though your dad went through it and now you're going through it. I think that's probably my favourite non-character character in the entire movie is the guy whose job it is to defend...
guard the gap in the wall.
Guard the gap in the wall. And I'm trying to remember of something it also reminded me of, which is going to annoy the hell out of me. The Northern Lights books.
Right.
Have you read those?
No.
Oh, okay. They've screwed them up with the TV show and the horrible movie.
Right.
But it is like weirdly jumping dimensions to places that are like the past, but then like modern day, but it's not modern day because obviously when it was written and blah blah blah. But it did remind me a little bit about that. But yeah, the Howl's Moving Castle setting is fascinating to me because like the war machines are powered by magic, but they're also like over the top, borderline like Dr. Zeus drawn like war machines, like giant metal boats that are like even more advanced than we had during World War II, yet seem shittier. And you've still got like castle settings and like non-electricity, but then you've got cars running around.
Yeah.
And I love it because it's very... Studio Ghibli have this like ability to like blend genres in together because like the first movie I ever saw made by them was Nausicaa in the Valley of the Wind, which again is like they've got machine guns and like airships and stuff, yet there's still knights fighting with like armor and swords.
I mean, think of Porco Rosso.
Yeah.
Where it's just like it barely acknowledged that he's just a talking pig.
Yeah, and it's clearly set after World War One.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really love it. I really love the setting because it's such that perfect blend of like people running around with bolt action rifles and also guys who turn into giant flying monsters
Yeah.
and also flying airships that don't make any sense based on physics.
Yeah, they're very Studio Ghibli have a real way of like designing weird magical things that are like a part magic, part engineering, but look like they're supposed to be alive.
Yeah.
Like they look like there's some kind of bug or like a
the like little glider things they have clearly wouldn't fly. But they're also really cool, and I love the fact that like the control lever when Sophie like rescues Howl after pretending to be his mum, and then they do that split, and she's like trying to figure out how to fly this thing.
Yeah.
It's like it's like a aviation, like a modern. I say modern, but I'm saying like actual like motorized planes. So everything from World War One onwards stick. So obviously you've got 9 degrees of movement. Plus it's got like a ship's steering wheel, which doesn't make any sense. Like if you can go in all axes, why do you also need a wheel on it? Like
it doesn't make any sense.
And there's a lever, and I'm like, is that the accelerator? Like it's very interesting to design something as an adult. You can sit there and be like, it's semi-plausible, but I still don't understand how would this fly.
Yeah. Well, what do you think of the weird airship in Stardust? Because they also have a weird airship.
Yeah, the weird airship in Stardust is more like
Peter Pan type thing.
I was gonna say there are a lot of ships very similar in the Magic the Gathering.
Right.
Because I think they're called Weatherlights in Magic the Gathering.
Okay.
Again, something similar in the Mortal Engines series, the box, not the movie, where they're like, oh yeah, because it's got a blimp, it's faster than a blimp can be because it's got giant engines on the side of it, and pirates, space pirates, sky pirates, not space pirates.
Yeah, sky pirates.
Sky pirates is like a running thing in like those worlds, and which I love because that's a very steampunk ideal.
Yeah.
Of like, Laputa Castle in the Sky is another one.
Yeah.
Which have like sky pirates, and I love sky pirates. They're fantastic. It's just like we'll take everything about regular pirates and then just stick a hot air balloon on top of the ship. We'll still have sails. They'll still be like, arr, and still have sword fights, but just blimp on top of the sailboat. Done. Sorted.
I like that they're like collecting lightning.
Yeah, they're harvesting lightning as a job.
Yeah, that's how they make their money, is harvesting lightning.
Yeah, I love how like, why have I forgotten his name? I was literally reading
Robert De Niro.
Robert De Niro. I was like going to say no, who's the other guy that looks so similar to him? Al
Pacino doesn't look like him.
What are you talking about? Al Pacino and
or Marlon Brando?
No, and Robert De Niro. They get confused in my mind all the time.
You must have a really hard time watching Heat.
I haven't watched it in ages. It's on my list of like movies to rewatch. I think it's the reason I keep missing it is because like every time I'm like home alone and you're coming home in like several hours and I'm like, oh, I could watch a movie, and then I'm like, oh, this is like 3 hours and you're going to be home in 2.
Fair.
So I never do it. Yeah, just like even like, we'll talk over Michelle Pfeiffer because like her like weird I'm young again, horny at herself scene in the mirror was funny to me. Like she still would have been just on the like obviously like the used goods Hollywood shit used to do to old people getting older, unless they were men. They were just like, oh, we'll make the lady younger and younger and younger. She was like right at that like sort of downturn of probably not getting as many like I'm sexy roles. Because like you've seen the Batman movie where she plays Catwoman.
Yeah. That's like, I was going to say 20 years for this. It's not. It's what? It probably is almost 20 years for this.
It was late 80s.
Yeah, it's late 80s, but this was 2007. So
yeah,
probably 17, 18 years before this.
yeah. I'm trying to figure out when that movie was. Oh my god, I hate the fact that different people write different ways of Wikipedia and you have to find where the thing is. She had to be sewn into that outfit.
Right.
The thing I find funny is because there's a lot of modern movies, Marvel is a perfect example, both the Sony owned stuff and the non-Sony owned stuff, it's Disney owned, where you have actors complaining about their makeup regimes. And I think we touched on it in the Christmas episodes where Jim Carrey got a CIA person to come teach him like how to resist torture.
Yeah.
And was just like yelling at people and chain smoking cigarettes while he was getting entombed in like several layers of yak fur and makeup. But yeah, she was like physically sewn into her Catwoman outfit.
She wouldn't be the only one. There's definitely
a
whole lot of people in outfits and different things where people have been sewn into.
Like the other one, Jerry Ryan, who played 7 of 9 in Star Trek. I know you're rolling your eyes right now.
I'm not.
She was like borderline passing out because of like Star Trek. For those who don't know, including my co-host, lovely Lisa, have a horrific history with awful uniforms being made for the main characters, like just the material, everything, to the point where it started making like canon stuff in the show. It's very interesting. Like costume design taken into a lot of movies, like even on the whole fact that it's sort of medieval but not really. Like the work that has to go into armor is insane. And there's like several different techniques of making like chainmail look real on screen. And I think the funniest one by far is what they did for Monty Python's Holy Grail, where they just like had coloured wool as their chainmail.
Yeah.
And it's like, like you get multi-million-dollar productions and it's just like, well, that's clearly plastic. Oh, that's clearly plastic. Oh, that looks like actual metal. And then you get Lord of the Rings,
Lord of the Rings, like, I was going to say.
Everything's handmade by actual blacksmiths and it's all incredibly insane.
It's just real.
Yeah.
Well, we've felt the different kinds of chainmail they had because we've been on that weather tour and like there is some that is plastic, whatever, but you wouldn't be able to tell when it's especially like distance, and then for all the close-up stuff they've got the actual real chainmail.
And it's also very temperamental. Like people just think that it's like, oh, it's metal therefore, but it's like, no, you're talking about like interlinked rings that has to be like oiled, otherwise it just like turns to rust.
Yeah.
Like maintaining that stuff from an like accurate point in time.
Yeah.
Like no wonder like it only took. You had to be not super rich, but you had to be well paid to afford actual armor. Yeah. In that era, because like looking after it alone would have been a nightmare because you don't have stainless steel like we do. We're just like, oh, I'm just going to wet this cutlery and leave it. It's like, well, this is the reason that like when people first got cutlery in England, because it was like big in France at the time, and it was just like, cool. Rich people get silver, and everybody else ate with lead. It's like, well done, guys. I don't know what poison means. But yeah, I think the costumes well, obviously not both movies, but definitely in Stardust, like, do some decent, like, fun, not sci-fi fantasy sort of stuff. Yeah. Like, what happens on the ship where they get the new outfits is really funny, but like the royal
where they cut his hair and his hair is longer after they cut his hair. The royals. Yeah. They all have apparently. I had read it, but I didn't notice it. Apparently, all of the brothers have designs, patterns on their outfits that have the Roman numerals of whichever number they are.
Right.
Because obviously they're all named after what order they are in birth. So you've got like Primus, Secundus, etc.
Yes,
Septimus.
it was interesting. That was 92. So it wasn't. It was.
Oh, this was 15
years. Took me that long to find it. Thanks whoever edited Michelle Pfeiffer's Wikipedia page. Yes, no, it's everything about it is actually enjoyable. Like, it's not a great movie. Like, it's
Stardust?
Not, yeah.
It's a really enjoyable movie.
Yeah.
I really like it.
It's one of those movies I would watch again, but not for, like, a sequential number of years that has a 5 in it.
Okay. So in 5 years we're going to watch Stardust again?
Possibly. Well, no, probably in 5 years' time we'll have watched
15 years.
10,000 movies between now and then. I don't even remember anything I've said or who I was anymore. Only replaced with podcast content. No, it's just, yeah, obviously the outfits and the style, but everything about Howl's Moving Castle and all the Studio Ghibli movies are, like, over the top and then not at the same time. It's very interesting because for those who don't know history, up until World War One, actually no, during World War One, the French still wore like full blue uniforms. And what colour are the uniforms in Howl's Moving Castle, Lisa?
Green.
They were blue. What are you talking about?
The...
What? Are you colourblind? Am I finding out now on the podcast?
No, I was thinking the king or the prince wears green.
Yeah.
Yeah. he was wearing green.
He was wearing green.
He definitely was wearing green.
Yeah.
And all his guys were wearing green.
Yeah, but the soldiers were wearing blue.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is like that's what the French wore. Literally in like when they were fighting in trenches and also Napoleon area, they were still wearing blue. They were just like, we're going to stick with a primary colour. And the English went red and then brown. And they've stuck with brown ever since. We won't talk about the other side. It's interesting because, like, yeah, the costume design in all of those movies are fantastic. Like the whole premise of like the chosen one being a woman in a red dress for Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. No, blue. Is it blue or red? Maybe it's purple. Maybe I'm losing my mind.
Oh my god!
It's very warm in here. I'm like
slowly
losing my faculties.
If we were talking more about the movies, maybe this wouldn't be happening.
Fair enough.
You're just like, we've barely spoken about the movies because
Yeah.
we just want to talk about different things.
But that's the good thing about a movie. You can these movies in particular. There is so much like other stuff you can bring into it.
She's definitely wearing blue. Nausicaa.
Yeah.
Very blue.
Yeah.
So I don't know why you said she was wearing red.
Yeah, it's part of the plot. It's definitely part of the plot for the people who've seen it. Maybe it's purple. No, I'm pretty sure it's red. I'm gonna lose my mind. Someone join our Discord and correct me. Yeah.
All right. Anyway, so the movies that we actually watched, which were not Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind.
Yeah. Or Mortal Engines.
Or Lord of the
Northern
Rings.
Lights. Or what the other one we mentioned? I'm like stuck to my
Spirited
chair.
Away. We mentioned Spirited Away quite a bit. Do you want to talk about things that are similar between them?
Oh yes, let's start on that.
There's a lot.
So
obviously, falling stars.
Yeah.
There's a whole.
Calcifer is a fire demon.
Yeah.
And Howl, as a boy, trades his heart to Calcifer for power.
Yeah. But Calcifer originally was a fallen star.
Yeah.
Right, and then he ate him, and then gave him his heart.
Yeah.
And then gained magic abilities through that. Because he's able to use Calcifer's magic.
Yeah.
And then in Stardust, there's a fallen star who is a woman.
Yeah.
When she's on the magic side, but if she crosses over, she will become just a rock, piece of space junk. And
that's not what actually would happen, but yeah.
There's a whole lore around, and we see that it's not just lore, like it has happened that if you eat the heart of a falling star, you can essentially live forever.
Yeah.
So there's a similar kind of a vein there.
Gaining magical abilities by eating hearts.
Yes.
Yeah.
Basically.
So that's been the episode.
I mean, there's also something that I thought was interesting because it's a link between the villain in one and a hero in the other, is the damage done by magic. So like in Stardust, Michelle Pfeiffer's character is like a really old evil witch, but she eats some of the heart of the previous star they had caught and becomes young, sexy Michelle Pfeiffer.
Yeah.
And then when she uses magic, she starts to grow old again. So like you start to see signs that she's getting older, and going back to her true age. And in Howl's Moving Castle, you see the similar thing with Howl, that when he's using magic, then he's getting the monster is creeping in, he's growing feathers and things.
Yeah. There's also like a huge thing with the Witch of the Wastes as well, being very linked to Michelle Pfeiffer's character.
Absolutely. Yeah, she's very much
just being obsessed with getting a heart and, not understanding the consequences of it all.
Yeah, and being, that old, both of them are older witches who are disguising themselves and younger, and there's both with the Witch of the Waste and Howl and Michelle Pfeiffer's character, there's this desire for youth and beauty.
Yeah.
Because there's a quote that I took down from Howl, where he said, because he accidentally dyed his hair, and he said, "What's the point in living if you're not beautiful?"
Yeah.
Which really pisses off Sophie, who has never considered herself beautiful. And she's like, "Are you saying like my whole life is worthless?" You know. And that's very much what the witches in Stardust are chasing as well, is youth and beauty, and they're willing to go to totally extreme lengths to get that.
It's also super weird that in Stardust, his mum hasn't aged.
Yeah, I thought that was odd because his dad is played by a totally different character. Because his dad is played by Ben Barnes at the beginning.
Yeah, so Ben
Barnes, who you'd expect to be the lead.
Yeah, goes over the wall, has some fun times in the back of like a travelling cart, and then 9 months later is like, "Here's your son.
Yeah,
I wrote a letter and gave him a magic candle, but how does a magic candle work in the real world? I don't know, plot hole." Plot hole. And then, it's just like, and then he's like, I'm guessing like 18?
Yeah, they say it.
Yeah.
They say it. Ian McKellen tells us.
Yeah.
At the beginning, when he's narrating.
So it's just mum hasn't aged at all?
Yeah, so it's, because it's, it's been 19 years since we've seen his mother, and then she looks exactly the same.
Yeah.
Which is odd. But then you also see all her brothers, because it turns out, spoiler alert, that his mother is the sister of the seven princes.
The dead princes.
Yeah, the seven princes. That's such a bizarre, I mean, that's how the story starts, and that's very, like, abstract, or, like, absurdist almost thing, where it's, like, the beginning of this all is that there's a king who's dying, and he was one of 12 brothers, and he had to kill his 11 brothers to become king.
Yeah. And
he's disappointed in his sons because he had 7 sons and there's still 4 of them left alive when he's dying. He's like, one of you should have killed all the rest by now.
Yeah.
And then instead of, one of them inheriting it based on having killed all their brothers, he sends off this jewel, and it brings the star down. That's how the whole thing starts. But that whole, like, why is that the ritual? Why is that the how you get crowned king in that?
Yeah, it seems very counterproductive, because then what would happen if one of them was crowned king and then died? Yeah,
or never produced an heir. Like, you'd want to have contingencies.
Yeah,
like you want your brothers to have.
Because I can't remember the name of them. It's going to drive me nuts. The people who are obsessed with ancient Rome, get in the comments. One of the Caesars was, like, hiding in a closet when the previous Caesar died. He was literally like, leave me alone. Like, I don't want to be Caesar. And
Right.
just like, get out of here, we're going to put the wreath on you. It's just like, no, please.
Please don't do it.
Yeah. And it's the same happened with, like, English history. I don't know that much about, like, the lineage of kings in France, but it happened a lot in England, where they're just like, and then, of course, in literature. So those, because both things are taught as factual, not factual, it gets very confusing. It's just like, oh yes, the king died. The son is the heir is too young. I'm the creepy uncle and I'm going to take over. Oh no, the son died. Oh wait, he came back with a magic sword.
Magic sword?
Based on historical events.
I thought you were going with Hamlet until you said magic sword.
Yeah.
Was that not the plot of Hamlet you were...
Yeah.
And
then he wanted to divorce his wife, so he started his own religion.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
I thought you were still talking about Hamlet for a second, then I realised it was Henry VIII.
Yeah.
Yes, anyway. There's more similarities between them. I've forgotten them.
Okay.
What similarities would you like to talk about?
The power of love.
The power of love.
Yeah.
It's a curious thing.
Yeah.
Makes a one-man week. Yes. Well, I don't understand the turnip head thing that happened. Because Turnip Head is a scarecrow
who's got a head of a turnip, who's like stuck in a bush.
And then
Sophie rescues him, and then he's just like her like magical manservant.
He just follows her around and stuff, and then like at the end of the movie, she kisses him on the cheek, and he turns into
the missing prince.
The missing prince,
who's
and he's
caused the entire war.
Yeah, and then they're like, oh, but you could only have been cured by a kiss from your beloved, and then but she's in love with Howl, and then her and Howl are there, and the prince is like, right, I guess I'll go then. Did
you also notice at the end of it, he just literally grabs a stick and flies away?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. He's maintained the magical abilities from this.
But like the overarching plot line is he's a missing prince.
Yeah.
Who's gone missing in the territory of another country.
Yeah.
So the other side is obviously thinking he's been kidnapped or murdered.
Yeah.
But he's just pissed off the Witch of the Waste, so she turned him into a scarecrow.
Yeah.
And just dumped him, like... And
in a bush.
Well, he gets trapped in things all the time, because he's clearly an idiot.
Yeah. I mean, in fairness, if you got turned into a scarecrow and you just had, like, a one stick you had to bounce on...
Yeah, but, like, all the rest of the time he's, like, borderline, like, agility level. Yeah. He picks up the Witch of the Waste and, like, flies with her.
I don't understand how he does that.
Helps them with washing, finds Howl's Moving Castle.
I do love
in
that.
In the opposite direction, then come, you know...
It's very funny to me that, you know, she picks him up because she thought he was a stick, and she's like, oh, I was looking for a walking stick, and he gets her one, and then she's like, oh, why don't you get me a house to sleep in? Yeah. And then he just brings a house to her. It's like, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah. I want to talk about Howl's Moving Castle, the actual physical castle.
Yes, it's very cool.
It's very cool. We watched that video of the guy make it.
I kept thinking about when we were watching the
how insane it is when you actually look at the whole, like, the way he had to go through it by, like, taking stills from the movie.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is that even in the movie it changes.
Yeah.
Like...
It's also bizarre to me, rewatching it this time, because I didn't actually think about it. When Howl changes places, he takes Calcifer out of the fire pit, or the heath, and changes the physical layout of the inside of the castle. But then you realise that they're not existing inside the castle. The castle is just a shell made out of garbage.
Yeah.
And that's how they can travel through all the portal doors.
Yeah, and you see that again when Sophie takes Calcifer out of it and it falls down and none of the stuff that was in there is in there.
Yeah.
The portal sucks up and then it's literally just a pile of garbage.
Yeah.
So Calcifer is keeping the pile of garbage moving, keeping them hidden, keeping the portals going, keeping whatever made up dimension they're in.
No one really complains consistently of having to make hot water. It's just like, bro, do you understand how much shit I'm doing right now?
But that's why he loves it then when Sophie's like, because she kind of dismisses him at first too, and then she's like, wait, are you doing this? He's like, yeah. And she's like, this is the greatest magic I've ever seen. He's like, oh, let me show you this.
Yeah, I've got recognition for the first time in probably decades.
Yeah.
I'm emotionally abused, even though I'm literally a demon made out of fire. Yeah, it's funny watching, back to the power of love, you know, you go from, like, a guy who's just like, I'm trying to find this fallen star to give to this girl I like, who's clearly a shallow piece of shit.
Yep.
Oh, I'm gonna literally take a woman hostage and then, like, march her back X amount of miles, he doesn't even know how far it is.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, well, I'm just going to go take you, like, literally, here's a chain that's magic, like, we're going back to the wall, lady. And then, you know, obviously, hearts soften, and then, you know, hijinks ensue, and they fall in love with each other, and literally goes back and tells the mortal person, like, don't like you anymore. Marry Henry Cavill. And I was like, holy fuck, it's Henry Cavill.
Yeah.
Because the first scene where he's on screen, it's dark. And I was not watching.
Also, he's younger and, like, blonde or ginger and has blonde, a mustache and sideburns.
Yeah, he's got a very, like, Victorian mustache combo thing going on.
Yeah. I do love the when Victoria is like saying, oh yeah, you know, you went all that way to do it, so yeah, sure, I'll, you know, whatever. And Tristan, like, dips her and then is like, grow up, and just drops her on the ground. It's so good. He's very, but the power of love thing, the other thing related to that is the transformations that happen because of it, because you see in Stardust, obviously she's a star, and when she's seeing him, or when she's thinking about him, or when while she's falling in love and she's having those feelings, she glows, she shines. And you see that happen in Howl's Moving Castle as well, because especially, like, it happens a bunch of times, but it's most noticeable when Sophie is standing up for Howl to Suleiman, where she just, like, turns back into young Sophie without realizing she's even doing it, just because she's talking about Howl and you know how good he is. And it's that same idea of, like, giving away to other people without even realizing it, that she's in love, when maybe she hasn't even considered those are her actual feelings because that it's a form of magic in these worlds.
It's a very weird curse to put on somebody, of, like, stealing their youth and then just being like, oh, you can't tell anybody. Calcifer's like, well, that's a really bad spell. And and she's like, so the Witch of the Waste, like, fix me, and she's like, I can't. Nothing can do
I can make spells. I don't know how to break them. And it's funny because it's the whole idea. And again, this isn't. I don't want to watch the English version because I'm afraid they're going to do a Spirited Away on it and just announce it. But, like, the whole kind of, there's, like, just subtleties throughout it where you're realizing that Sophie actually is a witch, or she does have that innate magic ability, because otherwise she wouldn't be able to control that, and she wouldn't, you know, have been able to turn her pet to fall around, and she wouldn't have been able to do, like, half the things she's able to do. So she obviously does have innate magic in her. But it's never, like, really expressly addressed. But it's clearly, you know, she's able to do a bunch of things she's able to do that a normal girl wouldn't be able to do.
Yeah, because she says it like, when I get passionate, I get a burst of energy.
Right.
And it's literally like this curse that's been put on her is literally trying to, like, destroy her. But then, like, doing things for other people is what's, like, giving her, like, her power, like, her life back.
Yeah. So she's literally, like, making her, like, she's countering the spell that people don't know how to break. You know? So she does have some kind of strong magic that she doesn't know about or know how to control necessarily, but it's
interesting there. Because, like, everybody else just sees her as this old lady. But then you get, like, weird sequences where it's clearly Howl looking at her. Because the scene where she's, like, first sleeping, and she's back to, like, normality, and Howl's just, like, sitting there watching her, and he gets, like, a weird creepy twinkle in his eye. and then he like goes upstairs to have his bath, and then comes down all ugly and stupid.
Yeah.
But
Apparently in the book, he's like, he knows the whole time that she's Sophie, but he like tries to, or that she's under a curse, but he tries to reverse it and it doesn't work, and he's like, oh, I guess she just likes being this way, and never addresses it with her. And it's only like afterwards that she's like, wait, why didn't you do anything if you knew? Which I think is funny that he's like, oh, but I mean, it would make sense also if he had the ability to lift it, but when he tried to, it didn't work because she unconsciously was keeping it on.
Yeah.
Because she could just get rid of it when she wanted to.
Sorry, there was a moment of silence. I'm just very warm and very conscious of the fact that if I move forward, I might make like horrible skin against.
Don't do that.
Material sticky noises. Have you got any? Would there be? Is there much trivia about Studio Ghibli movies?
I mean, I mostly just kind of looked at trivia about the book, to be honest, which I've kind of gone into anyway.
Because box office obviously doesn't compute because they're 5 years apart and one's animated and
I didn't even look.
Far more popular than the other one.
And they're also totally different audiences and made in different countries and everything and I haven't looked. We could look at the budgets, I suppose.
I'm doing it now.
You're doing it now?
You want to get into the...
Yeah, so I think I've basically, throughout what we were talking about, given all the stuff I was going to say about trivia-wise for Howl's Moving Castle. For Stardust, I think I've talked about a lot of this as well. Robert De Niro, I thought this was funny. Robert De Niro turned down the role of Barbossa in Pirates of the Caribbean and then regretted it when the movie came out. Yeah. And he took this role because of that. He was like, okay, I'm not turning another one. I'll take this one.
Like, honestly, I'm kind of glad he did. Because the Barbossa that we got is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, he's perfect.
Yeah.
And I like Robert De Niro in Stardust.
Yeah.
It's an odd role. It reminded me a lot of Stede Bonnet, because we've been watching Our Flag Means Death.
Yeah.
The whole like gentleman pirate thing where he's like keeping up the pirate reputation, but that's not really what he wants to do.
Lying about murdering people so other people don't screw with them.
Yeah. This one I just thought was weird, but I didn't notice it in the film. So when they're in the inn and when Tristan and Yvain confess their love to each other.
Yeah.
And then they share a bed. It was filmed with Charlie Cox topless.
Yeah. And
then they decided that it was too suggestive, so there's a shirt digitally imposed onto him.
Oh wow.
For that scene. They're just like, no. Let's just put a shirt on him and post.
The only issue with that is does that mean he's like Winnie the Poohing it?
The what? That he's shirt on top and no, because I think the idea was that he was only shirtless.
Right.
In the thing, he wasn't like naked. I think he was shirtless, but because like there's covers over them. But I noticed that like in the she's topless in it.
She's naked more than he is.
Yeah. So it was bizarre that they were like, no, it's too suggestive if he's topless.
Yeah.
This is something that I thought you picked up on when we were watching it, which is that the princes, when they're killed, they bleed blue blood.
Yeah.
Which is obviously because they're royal, they're literal blue bloods.
Yeah.
Because you were like, what? Oh. So I figured that, but it also would have allowed them to show those deaths more violently and keep the lower rating. There is a little bit of blood that appears in it, but it's
not a lot.
Not a lot. But I think, does Tristan ever bleed? I think Tristan bleeds, but he doesn't bleed blue.
Or I think he's got like scrapes on his face, but like it's not like, I think it's from the end fight where he fights with zombie Mark Strong.
Right.
Which is
so cool.
Such a good scene.
That would have been like so much fun to choreograph.
Yeah, it would have been so hard on the stunt guy.
Yeah, I assume a stunt guy did it because like every time he's doing stuff, you can't see Mark Strong's face.
Yeah.
But there's like a bit in that where he's like walking on his ankles and stuff. Yeah. Like it's really cool. So for context, for people who are listening to this and haven't watched this movie, first of all, I recommend both these movies. They're very fun. But there is so these 7 princes who are trying to get this gem end up all dead. but the last one of them is killed by the witch using a voodoo doll.
Yeah.
Where she's like breaking his arms and legs and stuff, and then she dunks him in water, and he literally floats up and drowns in the air, which is really cool anyway. But then when she's fighting Tristan, she picks up the doll and gets the corpse of this guy to fight with him, and it's such a cool sequence. And meanwhile, all the brothers' ghosts are watching on, and they're not sure what's going to happen, because the way it works in their world is that they all become ghosts until one of them is crowned king, and then the ghosts can go off to the afterlife or whatever. So they're like, oh, I guess nothing's gonna. I guess we're just like this forever.
Yeah.
And then they realize that this guy is their sister's son.
Nephew.
No, their sister's son. I said.
Yeah, it means nephew.
Yeah, he's their nephew.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying he's their sister's nephew. I was like, no.
Yeah.
But it means that, yeah, so he is the heir to the throne. He picks up the gem as well. So then they get to all disappear, but they're all just sitting there watching this fight and like turning to Septimus, being like, "What?" And he's like, "I'm not doing this."
Yeah. Can I also talk about the fact that, like, yeah, they are chasing after a giant ruby.
Yeah.
But it isn't a ruby. It's just clear.
Yeah.
It's like the royal stone must be turned back into a ruby.
Yeah.
So from the outside world, she's just walking around with like a diamond the size of a walnut, and no one questions it or tries to steal it at all of the entire movie.
Yeah.
It's very bizarre. So the interesting facts I just located.
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously there's a few years difference.
Yeah.
What do you think the budget of Stardust was?
I would reckon House Moving Castle probably had a bigger budget. Stardust. I don't know, it's got so many big names in it though. 70 million.
It says 70 to 88.
Hey!
Yeah.
I'm getting good at estimating these.
But you think Howl's Moving Castle cost more?
I was thinking in terms of like the production value of it, but it wouldn't. I was gonna say it wouldn't have the cast, but it does because they have the English dub. But I don't know. Do they include that in the?
It's 2.4 billion.
2.4 billion.
Yen.
Oh yeah. Oh my god.
It was 24 million.
24 million. So
24
it
million.
was way less.
Yeah, and it made. Which one do you think made more?
Howl's Moving Castle.
Yeah, by a lot, double. It made 236 versus 137.
137 million isn't bad for Stardust though.
Yeah, well, or
for like a weird
23.2 billion yen.
For a weird a weird absurdist fantasy based on a Neil Gaiman novel based on a poem he hated.
Yeah.
That's a and we should acknowledge the author of the other book is Diana Wynne Jones, which explains why he goes to Wales.
Yeah. With
a name like Wynne Jones. But also good on them for casting a Welshman in the English dub, because Christian Bale is infamously Welsh. Infamously Welsh. He's super Welsh. The Welshest. He's not the Welshest. There are Welsher people than Christian Bale. Christian Bale is a Welsh actor. Which should be acknowledged, because I think too many people think he's an English actor. Yeah. That's a Welshman. Yeah. Anyway, is there anything else you want to talk about it?
No, it is very warm in here. Thank you to those people who have followed us from 2023 into 2024, and of those who have found us in 2024 and gone back to the beginning of the year. Hey, look, you've got several other years of backlog content that can fulfill your ears. True. Don't listen to us on brain vibrating headphones. Apparently Nick's voice is too deep for those the things that vibrate in your temple and go in. So you gotta listen with your ears. Yeah. You're taughting us to this one. I was gonna say there must be people in the Northern Hemisphere. A lot of our listeners are in the Northern Hemisphere who listen to this and are like, why is he complaining about how warm it is every January? It's hot. It's hot in Wellington, guys. Yeah. In January is the warm season. It gets warm. Northern Hemisphere have winter and Southern Hemisphere have summer. And it basically rotates the opposite. It's the same with the day and night cycle.
Yeah, true. Well, no, that's not true.
It's a line.
It's
a line that
but
moves
there's
across.
parts of the northern hemisphere have day at the same time as us, and parts of the southern hemisphere have night when it's day.
Yes, but then the majority of the places that Western cultures exist in aren't awake at the same time as each other when they're based in northern versus southern
what are you talking about? Are you like excluding all of Africa and South America from the southern hemisphere?
No, I'm just saying that the majority of Western countries are in Europe and North America.
No, they're not.
What?
The majority of countries are in Europe and North America.
Western
Yeah,
countries.
West. Yeah.
No, not...
Africa is west of here. South America is further west than Europe.
The spoiler alert, the planet is a globe and everything is west of everything.
Yeah, but if you're counting Europe as west, South America is further west.
European listeners and American listeners are in the different area, so directly above us is like Japan and stuff.
That is further west of here as well. There's like Russia. Russia is directly above us. Some part of Russia.
It's very warm.
Siberia.
I'm losing my mind.
Okay. Alright, well, thank you very much for listening. Oh no, that's what you normally say. You can find us. Our website is ittakes2.co.nz.
I'm telling you.
ittakes2.co.nz. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr, not so much Twitter anymore. We do have a Discord server. The link is in the show notes, and you should come join and talk to us.
But not if you want to play the game It Takes Two, because that's what we've been getting lately.
Yeah. Oh no, I think we've had 2 people or maybe 3 people join who thought that it was for the game It Takes Two. I don't know how they found us though.
Yeah, that's very confusing.
Searching places for It Takes
They're
Two
not
Discord.
English speakers, so
yes.
it's been it's like Google
trying
Translate help.
Yeah, trying to explain. No, please. This you can play the game, but this is not for that. You can talk to us about our podcast.
We have like a sub channel within the Discord of like It Takes Two.
The game?
The game.
This is for people to talk about the game and ignore us. Anyway.
Thank you. Goodbye. Stay cold or warm, depending on your respective season. I need to go to this room.
Goodbye.